Let's go for it!
Hey everybody, it's me, your buddy Dave, the host here at The Dark Stuff. Welcome to my newest video and true confession time here, folks. I've been sort of evaluating my YouTube habits lately, and I'm starting to realize that I haven't been participating as much in the community aspect of the vinyl community as I used to. And maybe that's just a fact that I've been here for 3.5, almost 4 years doing videos. 3 years doing videos, and I'm, you know, I've done so many of them, and I get so involved in my own stuff that sometimes I kind of forget to like check out new channels. I do try to frequent the same people, but you know, people that I like, and I always comment and stuff if I can. But even that, I'm finding, you know, those folks are getting a little more, you know, paced out in terms of how often they update the channel and stuff. So I see that I've fallen behind 2 or 3 videos by the time I'm ready to comment on one, and then I'm like, I don't know, should I comment on a video from like a month ago or 3 weeks ago? Is that stupid or whatever? Anyways. And you know, one of the big community building exercises, I suppose, in the community is done a lot when you're sort of a new channel, and that's sort of the subscriber contests, or you know, this. And I did one for 200 subs, I think, back in the day. I've kind of phased out doing those, and mainly because I got out really into my own world. I tried to make some sort of series of videos, and those didn't pan out, and now I'm just kind of back to doing my normal thing. But I decided that, you know, I wasn't really getting into any new channels, and that was because I wasn't trying very hard, you know. So I decided to try to find a couple of new channels, and I did. Well, one of the channels that I've gotten into lately, or a newish to me anyways, person, is Chris over at Vinyl Transmission. Been watching his videos. Big metal listener, but at the same time, will show off all sorts of different kinds of records, indie music, you know, classical, alternative, punk rock, whatever, in addition to metal, more mainstream, more underground and lesser known metal bands. So anyways, I've been watching his videos every now and again, and he puts funny production stuff in there, which I like because I try and do that too. And he did a response video to someone else's channel for a video that they were doing, and that channel is Tales from the Crates. So I watched Vinyl Transmission's video, and I liked it, and I was sort of like, man, I should maybe do that. Maybe this will be I'll get back into it this way. And then I watched the original video, the Tales from the Crate video, and which was deeply personal and really, really in depth, and just about what was going on in his life when these albums came out and how important, significant they were, and all of this. And it's a good video. You should watch it. It'll be linked here because that's the contest video. Anyways, the contest called for you to take, I think he said 7 to 10, I'm not sure what I have here, records from your past and sort of tell the story of your life as these records sort of tie in. Before I get started, I just want to do one thing, and that is to do my little bit to pay homage to Tom Petty by showing this box set here called Playback. Now, this was an amazing box set from 1995, which was all-inclusive at the time. 6 CDs. It was like, man, this guy's got the catalog. What the fuck? This was 22 years ago, okay? He's still got at least 10 albums, I think, past this. You know, this box set isn't whatever. Anyways, Tom Petty was just such a great guy. He's a great artist. I loved his music. Great in the 70s, great in the 80s, great in the 90s, great in the 2000s. You really can't say that about a lot of similar people in his sort of genre or his sort of vein. You know, your Springsteens, your Bob Dylans, whatever. Petty was far more consistent than those guys. I'll do a quick anecdote before I get into the contest response. So This would have been probably 1986, I think. 1986. I was 15, living in Omaha, of course. That's where I grew up. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were coming to town. And I had this new friend who had just moved to Omaha from Wisconsin. And he was cousins with Howie Epstein from the Heartbreakers. Okay, he was the bass player from like 81 when he joined the band until he died a few years ago. And in fact, Howie used to babysit my friend when my friend was a little kid. Okay, so their families were close. So we decided that, we will go down to the hotel where the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were staying, and we knew that because every band always stayed at this place called the Red Lion Inn in downtown Omaha. It's no longer there. It's called something else now. It's probably like a Hilton or something. I don't know. And we go down there and we're like, we'll just bump into the Heartbreakers, no, for sure, right? I'm 15. I think he was like 16 or 17. And we saw Mike Campbell. He did walk by, but as soon as he saw there were fans in the lobby, and they wanted to talk to him, he kind of bolted off. So my friend and I are figuring, well, we're just going to have to bump into Howie and say hi that way. Because you got to remember something. This was in the days before cell phones and all that. And so you couldn't just call people, and long distance was a big deal. If the person didn't live in your city and they didn't have the same area code as you, it cost a lot of money to call them back then, and that wasn't something that 15-year-olds had a lot of money to be making long distance calls. So we asked my friend's dad to call his relatives back in Wisconsin and see if they could somehow get in touch with Howie to get us backstage so we could talk to him and maybe parlay that into meeting Tom Petty. But we had tickets to the show anyways. So we go down there and, we're in the hotel and we're just hoping we're going to bump into the Heartbreaker. And we go into the gift shop and we see the band, the Del Fuegos, were there.
And the Del Fuegos.
A couple of the guys from the Del Fuegos. And the Del Fuegos are one of the opening bands on that tour. So maybe this was 87. I don't know. It was 86 or 87. I thought it was the Southern Accents tour, but I'm not 100% sure. But I am 100% sure that the Del Fuegos were there. So we bump into them and we start talking to them. And we were like, just kind of chatting and stuff. And they had said that they had been up since like 6 in the morning because they went on Z92, the radio station, that morning to do an interview, and they just volunteered the information that they were tripping on acid during the interview with Otis 12 and Diver Dan. They were the big morning guys in Omaha back in the mid 80s. So it was like, oh, fucking cool, man, whatever, And then we're like, hey, if you bump into like Howie from the Heartbreakers, will you tell him that his cousin is here and like we're trying to get in touch with him? And we're going to be at the show, and if there's any way he could, like, leave us some passes or whatever, or just, we just want to say hi. And we told the Del Fuego guy, and we figured, like, well, this guy's fucking, one, he's on acid, okay, so he's not going to remember this. And two, he probably thinks we're full of shit and whatever. Long story short, because this isn't really part of the contest, we didn't hook up with Howie or with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. But I did find out the next day that the guy from the Del Fuegos did remember and did tell Howie that his cousin was in town and that we were trying to connect with them. But he didn't find out until like after the show or something like that. So there was no way we could connect, and we never ended up meeting him. And then, I never ended up meeting Howie from the Heartbreakers at that point, because then my friend moved somewhere else. I think he moved back to Wisconsin, and we weren't seeing Heartbreaker shows, I guess, back then. So anyways, rest in peace, Tom Petty. That was my long a story that wasn't really about you, but I just had to get that in there because he's too big a deal to just ignore. But I've done so many rest in peace videos lately, I just can't do any more right now. So nobody should die in the short term. So back to the contest. The contest was pick 7 to 10 records, tell sort of the story of your life. So let's start with this record here, The Who, Face Dances, 1981, Warner Brothers, or at least my copy's Warner Brothers. And I was 10 years old at the time, And I already had bought the 7-inch for You Better You Bet, which was the single off this, and I fucking love that song. I wore out the grooves on that one. This was the first record I bought with my own money that I can remember. I started getting into rock at about age 10. I've been coming off a big obsession with Neil Diamond, which carried on a little bit past this period, but Neil Diamond was, believe it or not, my sort of introduction into music. And from Neil Diamond, I kind of then got into The Who because of You Better You Bet. I liked AC/DC because of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. I liked Kiss. More Kiss because of the image. I had pictures of them all over my room, but I didn't have any records at the time, you know, so it was weird. I was into Kiss, but more like the idea of Kiss, I guess, than the actual thing. Anyways, this record gets the short shrift from critics, and people knock it and everything, and in the grand scheme of great Who albums, maybe this isn't up there in the upper echelon, but I love this album start to finish, every fucking track. I've played it hundreds of times. It meant a lot to me. I mean, shit, like songs that You Better You Bet is still one of the best Who singles ever. You Don't Let Go of the Coat, the Quiet One, which was John Entwistle's song, Did You Steal My Money, which I recently read what the origins of that song was about, which I didn't know for 30 years what it was about, but then Pete Townsend talks about it in his autobiography, and I finally found out the origins of that. I'm not going to get into it here, but it was interesting. He also talked about How Can You Do It Alone? Daily Records, a great song. I tried to use that as the theme for my a series I tried called Daily Records. I did like 3 of them. I abandoned it. Anyways, so this record, about 10 years old at this point when this record came out. So that's my number 1. Moving on, I would say this record is 1983, and this isn't the first Styx record that I heard, but Styx was really the first band that I became completely obsessed with, and I just loved everything, and I had to go back and get all their albums and tapes. And again, this would have been when I was 12, but I've been listening to Styx for a couple years. At this point, Styx was becoming my favorite band, probably 82, 83. And I saw Styx twice on this Kilroy Was Here tour. You know, 12, 13-year-old me thought it was the most awesome thing I'd ever seen. And I didn't know this was actually the reason why Styx broke up was because of that tour, that it was such a disaster and so many of the guys didn't like it and all of this. But I enjoyed it. I had to go to the concerts with my mom because I was young, but she was into it. She took me to both. I saw Styx in Lincoln at the Bob Devaney Center at the beginning of the tour, and then they came back and played the Civic Auditorium in Omaha on this one. And what I liked about Styx at the time, I remember, was because, you know, I was kind of a nerdy kid, and I guess I still am a nerdy adult now, but Styx, for some reason, seemed almost smart and intellectual in a way. And I know that seems silly now as an adult because some of their stuff was really stupid, but some of it was a little or higher brow. I mean, the Grand Illusion, the concepts behind it, maybe a little bit of the Kilroy stuff, but whatever. I don't want to go off on a tangent about whether Styx are stupid or good. The point is, I thought they were intellectual, and they were sort of out, even though they were very mainstream, one of those popular bands in the world. In Omaha, anyways, in the rock world, they seemed to be outcasts. I remember I used to call and request Styx on the radio all the time to Z92, and the DJ, one of the DJs, I don't remember his name, the night guy at one period, was just man, Styx sucks, dude. I don't want to, why do you request this all the time? What, he knew it was me, I guess. And it was just whoa, man, screw you, And I remember him on air, making fun of Styx, and I was just man, screw this dude. So I grabbed onto Styx even tighter. But, my obsession with Styx probably ended about 2 years later, 84 or so. I got really into metal, and I sort of abandoned stuff like this. But I do still have the records in my collection. They're still pretty significant to me, and I don't see Styx as intellectual or anything anymore, but I don't hate it when I hear the old stuff, gotta admit. Okay, the next up would be really just shortly thereafter this. This is 83 also, so we're talking 83, 84. So again, 12, 13 years old. And I had referenced Kiss before. I'd been getting into Kiss. I liked Kiss. I liked the images. I liked the pictures. Whatever. But I really started getting into the music and became a Kiss obsessed fan when this record came out. I played this over and over. I had the cassette over and over and over and over. And Kiss was having a bit of a resurgency in popularity because taking off the makeup put them back in the media spotlight. But man, I don't know what it was. Kiss hadn't connected with me before, but now for some reason it did. 12, 13-year-old me is somehow digging like Young and Wasted, or I'm getting something out of Dance All Over Your Face, which is like, fuck you, bitch, I'm going to dance all over your face. How did I relate to that at 12? Okay, I wasn't being like, fuck you, bitch, I want to dance all over your face. I didn't have any bitches around, and I wasn't dancing on anybody's face. Fits Like a Glove, which is about a girl that's a bit tight. That's what they used to say in the concerts or whatever. Anyways, I felt like I could totally relate to this album at age 12. I loved it. Thus began my obsession with Kiss. And a year, 2 later, I was already doing my Kiss fanzine at that point. And I was just like fucking, all in for Kiss. But it really did start at this point in 1983, I would say. I liked them before, but this is where it kick-started. And that really became my obsessive nature about music, and where I decided I wanted to be involved in music. I knew I wasn't a musician, so I couldn't play anything, but I wanted to be like a manager or have a record label or do something. And this is where that obsession and that sort of started. All right, we're going to flash forward a couple of years to 1987, late summer 1987. I was 16 years old, so I could drive. And it's a big deal for people, especially in America, when you turn 16, because even if you don't have your own car, you have access to a car, most likely, a family car, your mom's car, your dad's car, whatever, your brother's car. You have access to a car which gives you this new mobility that you haven't had your entire life. And a big part of that mobility is being able to go to some empty area, someplace where no adults are around, play loud music and drink beer and smoke weed and do whatever. That's all you could do in the summer in Omaha. In the summer of 1987, there were 2 albums that my group of friends and I used to play like incessantly, like just all the time. Among many. I mean, we listened to Van Halen and all sorts of stuff, but there were 2 that we really hit it. And they're both significant because in a way, this is where my kind of hard rock life ended and my, sort of indie/punk rock world began. They coincided in the same summer, and there's other tie-ins too. Hold tight. So the first one I would say would be this right here. This is The Replacements, Pleased to Meet Me. It's their 1987 album. This is one of the only Replacements records I don't have on vinyl, so I just pulled out this The Ledge 12-inch just to show this is my street cred right there. Okay, The Ledge is a single off the album that was actually about suicide, not promoting it, but just telling a story about it. And MTV refused to play the video, and which again was just the band standing there in black and white, but because the MTV said it promoted suicide. Anyway, side note. So this record and this one here, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. This is my original pressing, 1987 Geffen Records, United States, with the original Rape cover and the sticker that came inside it, fully intact. It's never been used. This is just placed inside this frame. Okay. My friends and I were pretty early adopters to Guns N' Roses. They didn't really break nationwide until like 1988. But we followed the sort of the LA music scene. We would read the magazines. I forget what they were, with the weeklies that would come out, and there was all these articles about Guns N' Roses. So we were like amped. Before we'd even heard a note, we were like, the day Guns N' Roses came out, we were at the store like picking it up. Well, me and my buddy had become friends with a couple of older guys. Not much older, maybe 2-3 years older, and they were like musicians, and they could also get access to beer and stuff. And we just used to party a lot. And among listening to Van Halen, the Rolling Stones, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, over and over and over and over, and the Replacements, Pleased to Meet Me. So I associate these two things with just that great period in my life, just high school. It was fun, no drama, no none of that shit. It was just good times, and probably the best high school time that I ever had. Most of these guys were they had graduated, they'd moved on, and some of them I've never even seen since then. I mean, we're friends on Facebook and shit, but that's about it. So Guns N' Roses really represented to me and looking back in retrospect, saying the pinnacle of hard rock / metal. There was just nothing better than this at the time, and there's really hasn't been a band better than this since then. This marked the end of my real interest in following that sort of LA thing, because then later it became, glam metal, pop metal, hair metal, which I did like, but again, I was starting to phase out of it. The Replacements, and then Husker Du and some other bands, they were my gateway into my future, okay? Just oddly enough, that the Replacements and Guns N' Roses at one point shared a bass player, and that's Tommy Stinson from the Replacements, was in Guns N' Roses for about 15 years. So I got this, by the way. There's my GNR sweatshirt that I'm wearing. So anyways, this just represented like a really great time for me, and it really represented what my next few years were going to be like, because it was all about, the Replacements and Soul Asylum and Husker Du and REM and just all these bands that were previously I hadn't been into, but now I'm like getting super into, and 87 changed the course of my world. Okay, flash forward a couple years. I'm probably about 20 at this point. I'm in college at the University of Wisconsin. I would come home to Omaha for breaks and stuff, for summer and for Christmas break and all that. And I became completely infatuated with this woman in Omaha, which again, I wasn't living there at the time, but I just was like, in 2 seconds, I was like totally in love with her. And we ended up kind of connecting a little bit, and her favorite artist was Elvis Costello, and I, at that point, kind of hated Elvis Costello, or at least I told myself I hated Elvis Costello. But I decided to start liking it for the purposes of impressing this woman. That was a big thing back then. I would sort of, well, if she likes this, then I got to sort of like that too. Anyways, so I started picking up a couple of records. I think I picked up the Girls, Girls, Girls compilation, or whatever, like a greatest hits or something. And it was all bullshit to me until I connected with this record, Blood and Chocolate. Now, I should point out that things didn't really materialize between me and this woman, and in my sort of heartbreak about that never working out, this album hit me. Okay? This album has Elvis's song, I Want You, on it, which is one of the saddest, most depressing songs about being heartbroken, being there's a love that doesn't get, like you want someone and they just don't want you. It's just not, it ain't happening, friend. And that song fucking destroyed me back then. But I fell in love with this album. Every song is great on it. This is the Ryko disc version that came out in the 90s, which had a series of bonus tracks. I'd say like 6, 7 bonus tracks. But, every song on this, Uncomplicated, I Hope You're Happy Now, Tokyo Storm, Warning, Blue Chair, Battle of a Bird, Crimes of Paris, Poor Napoleon, every single song. Thus begun my new obsession with Elvis Costello, and once I connected with him at some point, then all of my previous objections to Costello's music, I didn't like his voice, I thought he was whatever, he had that conflict with I don't know what his conflict was, but anyways, who knows, whatever dumb objection I was raising, I got past it at that point. He's one of my all-time favorites now, and so that's why this was significant, and it was tied to an individual at one point, but it so far transcends that one person. Most of the 90s I'm going to kind of skip over, and that was because I was in the music business at the time. And so many things are tied into the business, and what I had a record label, and that was where all of my focus was, and I was not focusing on a lot of other music. I would hear it obviously, but my entire world was the label, and was traveling around, and was You know, it was bands I would see, and then that was the new record I was super into and stuff. And I guess that those would be really its own separate video. So my record label ended about 99 or 2000, and I went into like a pretty deep depression, you know. I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do. I kind of went back to school for a little bit. And then I decided to move to Florida. Okay, long story. But I was living in Wisconsin at the time. I decided to move to Florida, and I was just going to do something totally different with my life. I was like, I'm out of the music business. Fuck this. You know, I'm done. I don't want any part of it. I'm over it. I'm over it. I sold 75% of my vinyl collection at the time, my records. I was just like, fuck this world. I'm moving on. Dave 2.0, here it comes. Well, that worked for a short period of time, but ultimately I had to work out my own other issues. They really didn't have anything to do with music or the music business. And when I was down there, I was just I got even more depressed. It was like, man, this sucks. So it wasn't where I was living. It's like something else. You know, there's something else going on. You know, when you are really depressed, things that are normally of interest to you are all of a sudden just not that interesting. And for me, that was music. But at some point around 2002, 2003 or so, I finally reconnected with music. I had really been music was the background to me for a couple of years, like maybe 2 or 3 years, where it was like, well, if you like this, just put on whatever. I don't give a shit, you know, play whatever you like. Didn't make any difference to me, okay? But then I finally connected with music again, and I'm going to actually show 3 records, but I'm just going to address them real briefly, because this is going to be one entry of all 3 records. So the first was this EP by the band The Fags. Okay, this is a Detroit band. I've talked about them on the show. This is their first EP. And I went into a record store, and they had a display there, and it was the employee picks, you know. And I had worked in a record store, so I know that sometimes they're the best people to get for unknown picks. So this one said something like, for fans of the Replacements and Red Cross. Bam. Picked it up. Fucking loved it. Okay? That made me kind of reconnect. I was getting all tingly again in terms of music. I was loving it. Then this record came out from Superdrag. Now this is a band I'd already listened to in the 90s, but their original lineup had left. They had 2 guys had quit. They replaced them with one. They were a trio. I saw them actually in 2001 or so in North Carolina when I was visiting my brother when they were touring in support of this album, and I was just like, okay. But about a year later, this record connected with me big time, okay? It was the song, well, In the Valley of Dying Stars, which is the title cut, really connected. Keep It Close to Me was excellent. Bright Pavilion, Ambulance Driver, True Believer. I mean, every song on this album is great. Production's a little lo-fi in comparison to their major label stuff, but it's excellent. God, I love this album. I mean, it hit me on every fucking musical level. John Davis, the main guy behind this band, was so much of a melding of all the stuff that I had liked in the past. Brought me back to the 80s. Brought me back, you know, Replacements, Kinks, all sorts of stuff. Fantastic. And then the third in this trinity is a record from an Omaha band, but I wasn't living in Omaha at the time, and the band is called Neva de Nova. Now this is actually an independent press that was released on a label later, but I still have the original, okay? And this album, I was like, fuck, this is the album that like Radiohead or somebody should have made in 2003, because Radiohead was doing all this experimental shit, and I was just like, these guys are the fucking shit. This guy Jake Bellows wrote the songs. I mean, every song on here was a gem. The production was great. It was just amazing guitar songs, alternative guitar rock or whatever, I don't know, with like a real singer-songwriter way of writing songs, but the band played just exceptional indie rock. And again, it was just something that I connected with where I hadn't been connecting with anything. And I liked Neva de Nova so much that like I wanted to work. I wanted to get back into the music business. I was like, fuck, let's make some calls. Like, I want to do something. I want to fucking help these guys. Turns out they were kind of beyond help at that point, and they weren't interested. But side note. Anyways, so that would be these three: Super Dragon, The Valley of Dying Stars, The Fags, self-titled EP, and Nova, self-titled. Those three in my entry for getting me out of my funk, getting me back into my music obsession, making me realize why I am the way that I am, you know? And then I moved back to Omaha, I moved back home, and within a few months of being there, I got an opportunity to host a radio show, my radio show, New Day Rising, that I've been doing since the end of 2004. So I'm not going to talk about a bunch of records. I'm just going to show basically one artist that epitomizes that time that I've been in there, where they emerged while I was doing the radio show. They started off as a tiny little nobody and are now on the verge of becoming a big somebody, and they are awesome. And I had a personal interaction with them, and it was great. And that is St. Vincent. This is a CD single for a song called Marrow. I have two of her albums there on my wall right there. There's the self-titled, and there's Actor. Both of those are autographed, by the way. I got to meet her and do an interview and stuff, and she was super awesome. And she represents the future of music for me, and she is just the embodiment of everything that I like about for current music, okay? I like a lot of bands these days. I mean, when people say, oh, music today sucks, dude, you're full of shit. Go back and look at my top 20 of the year for the last couple of years. There's tons of good records, okay, that come out. But there is a difference when you attach to a new artist when you're 15 and 16 versus when you're 45 and 46. I could get that same almost teenage level of excitement when I first saw St. Vincent at the front room of the Slowdown Junior little bar show, and oh my god, I just got the fucking vibe, and she's it. So that is where I'm at now in terms of music. Stuff's different for me, my life is different, I'm an adult, but music still has that ability to do it, and St. Vincent is the artist that did it, and I'm trying to have that balance between staying in my musical world, being a real person and having a normal life, and still trying to maintain that sort of ageless, like, curiosity about stuff. Anyways, I hope I didn't lose anybody in the length of this video, but I hope this qualifies as my entry. If I win, let me know. Thanks, bye.